They Hold Back the Dark. By Redditor Traditional Wolf 007. My father used to tell me that the devil lives in what men build. My dad lived his life despising the world. He was an eccentric man born into an unusual lot in life. He had, therefore, his reasons for what he did. But what I did? I have to wonder if it was right. I have to wonder if all this was worth it. And I have to wonder if I'll live to see freedom again. Staff Sarge waved his fingers forward in a quick motion. The squad of 8 lined up against the outer wall of the cave, just outside its mouth. He had 3 tours serving in Delta Force under his belt, a real badass that one. Must have had a death wish too, cause Delta Force is a lot safer than this post. They probably pay him good since he's not a con like me or most of the squad. Sarge points to me, then to the front of our stack. He wanted me to take point. Not sure what that was about, because I was the squad's designated marksman. If you don't know military crap, it suffices to say that's the guy that isn't quite a sniper but is a better enough shot than everyone else so that it warrants getting a slightly longer range rifle. A normal squad-designated marksman in a normal military unit would get a modern service rifle like an FN SCAR. But our guys tend to be issued either recently phased out or soon-to-be implemented equipment, so I ended up with a polymer-framed M14. Most are about 9 pounds, but mine was about 7.5 because of its lighter frame. That's still a heavy SOB compared to an M4 carbine. My boy packs a better punch, though, and with the stuff we're up against, I sure as hell need it. I peered through my weapon scope into the cave, my weapon light outshining the moon's light. I wasn't issued a pair of night vision binoculars or IVIS ENVG goggles. I can see in almost perfect darkness, so there's little point. Problem is, caves get darker than that, and our target for this operation isn't supposed to be able to see visible light. Supposed to, anyway. For those not intimately familiar with the darker corners of the world and our government's more clandestine operations, this might not make much sense so far. As such, I'd like to clear some things up. First things first, there are more than 6 branches in the US military. And there have been for a very long time. The public has been lied to for over 100 years about the scope of the US Armed Forces. The Air Force and Space Force existed well before the World Wars, for one thing. Their respective foundings under the Truman and Trump administrations were, in actuality, their emergence into the public's eyes. I suspect my own branch will soon undergo the same fate. The Air and Space Forces were created in the 1870s following the discovery of alien technology in the Mojave Desert by Union cavalrymen tracking bandits. The immensely advanced technology was kept separate from the rest of the armed forces because of the risks involved with it falling into human enemy hands. Yes, I said human enemy hands. The Department of Defense, or whatever it was called back then, recognized that there were things beyond the understanding of men in this world and beyond. The supernatural, the alien, and the anomalous. So, from the 1870s to their officially recognized foundings, the Air and Space Forces were tasked with defending the heavens above Earth from beings originating beyond our world. I, however, am neither guardian nor airman. I work for the Anomaly Unit, the 7th branch of the military, tasked with the defense of the American people from the paranormal and inhuman. There's a reason you don't hear about aliens coming down and shooting up New York City with ground troops. And it's us. Just last week we were fending one of ET's tactical teams off from a black site in Alaska. Those SOBs are after rare genetic material, and they'll kill to get it. I'd guess that particular day we were protecting some kind of mutated anthrax or something more mundane like that. AU intelligence thinks that they sell that stuff on some intergalactic black market but are just as likely to use it on us instead if we piss them off enough. It suffices to say that we try to avoid giving them what they want. Today, however, we aren't fighting aliens. If you've never heard of a fleshgate, you're in for a treat. It's about the size of a person, give or take. Shaped like one, more or less, too. Ain't got no hair, though. And the face? Looks like a chimpanzee, Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and someone who's had 1 billion too many cigarettes had an offspring. You get this emaciated, hairless thing that walks mostly on all fours, with claws like razor blades and infrared vision better than our best ENVGs can match. Some can change shape, too. The intelligence spooks think these bastards might have inspired the legend of skinwalkers, cause some of them can turn into any type of animal they come in contact with, including people. I know for a fact the spooks are flat out wrong about that. Skinwalkers ain't some animal of the woods, even one as horrifying as what we hunted. They're witches. Rogue native shaman using evil magic to change shape and practice other dark powers. We used to see them on the fringes of our property, looking for a fight but without the guts to actually start it. Tribal elders we were neighbors with used to tell us to throw white ash at them to keep them away, but if you've ever tried to use ash as a weapon, you'd know pretty much anything else is preferable. The skinwalkers wanted my folks dead especially, though. For the same reason I was recruited into the anomaly unit rather than serving my time in a federal prison. My white light glinted off something's eyes in the dark. They shone red, like someone's eyes in a bad picture. Well, mine would look green, but that's besides the point. I smelled the creature, reeking of blood and mildew. Something pale scurried across the ceiling, fleeing the light. My heart pounded in my chest and my stomach churned. Though I walk through the valley, in the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for the Lord God, you are with me. The Lord is my shepherd, there is nothing I shall want. I whispered, almost silently. Other forms scurried on the walls and ceiling. I caught my breath. Contact. Eyes on tangos. I whispered. Roger, Sarge replied, holding his fist up and peeking around the corner. Didn't smell a drop of adrenaline on him. Never understood how that guy could be that steady in the face of what we were up against. Hirano, flare. Sarge ordered. Private Suki Hirano, Hirano Suki? I call her Suki. When I talked to her, was, as far as I am aware, the only truly non-human member of our squad. The girl's a kitsune, basically a sapient fox that can change shape to human form. She also has something called psychic invisibility, which means that she can trick your mind into not seeing her, or at least noticing her, even if she's standing right in front of you. We're all conditioned to resist the effect in this squad, however. The woman was arrested as a thief in Japan for stealing some real valuable stuff, and is part of our alliance with Japan since the end of the Second World War. They hand over anomalous criminals to us. We don't get along. She's magic and I'm not. She's a Shinto and I'm a Christian. She's a reverse werewolf and I'm a werewolf. We don't mix. Suki handed him a flare off her belt. He uncapped it and at lit he tossed it into the cave, and I watched the whole, massive cavern light up with a hellish red glow. A chill went through me as I saw the massive cliffside cavern's insides crawling entirely with these abominations. Then, they started shrieking. Terrible, demonic shrieking. There was no discernible emotion behind it. No fear, no rage, no glee, or any other emotion you'd expect. Just evil. It was like an unholy chorus of bats mocking the hymns we above sang in benediction. Keep your damn rifle steady, Seth's son. Sarge ordered slowly, as I trembled before this army of the dark. I'd lost all breath discipline at that moment. Everything my father taught me escaped me at the mouth of that cave. Not the steady heaves and respires of a marksman, but the undisciplined pants of a fearful animal or child. I smelled the adrenaline in all of my squad mates now. Eric, the pantheist neo-Nazi with teardrop tattoos under his eyes. A murderer. A heretic. A racist. Suki, the thief. The foreigner. The animal poorly imitating humanity with slitted pupils and tufts of red fur in her most human form. The heathen who mocked the God I loved. Staff Sergeant Rob Smith, he'd lived in the dark for years of his life. I wondered how deep it cut through him. There was death in his eyes. There were more, of course, but these were where my mind wandered. I had little in common with any of them, but right then and there, I feared for their lives. They were my squad mates. I didn't much care for most of them, but when push came to shove, I cared about them, I guess. I didn't want them to die. Especially not here, in front of some forsaken cave somewhere in West Virginia. Show me the way. I prayed, simply and silently the instant the creatures charged. Light him up! Sarge screamed. My squadmates' weapons erupted in gunfire. Blinding light and deafening noise and the smell of sulfur and charcoal. I think the animal in me was somehow still afraid of guns, those things that men made even after my whole life living with them. I took a deep breath inward, feeling my weapon sway subtly, pointing in circles around my target. I squeezed the trigger at the bottom of my breath, and when my reticle found the monster's head, it jerked backwards and a spray of blood that scent hit the air instantaneously. The disturbing part about it was that it almost smelled like human blood. The overpowering ferrous scent that wasn't present in most animals was there in these flesh gates. They were uncanny in all ways. Too like men, but far too different. Just wrong. I missed a shot. One of the creatures pounced on one of my squad mates. Her name was Joanne. I think she was some kind of low-level empath, in for drug-related offenses. None of us wore any protection on our throats, except for thin balaclavas. The flesh gate made a clawing motion, and soon a fountain of blood jetted out from where her neck was before. She died without a scream. Every one of us fired at the one that had broken our line, neglecting the others advancing towards us at blinding speed. I fired half blindly, barely aiming, as the monsters swarmed over us. Hold position. Staff Sarge ordered. I smelled more human blood hit the air and someone screamed. I felt something cold and clammy on my shoulder. A strong, bony hand pulled me to the ground, and I saw above me one of the creatures. I bled from where its claws had sliced through my skin. Its face was like the grave. Its eyes were feral and hollow. Its jaw stretched open far too wide like a snake's. I'd had enough. Something in me gave way. My body began to change. I felt immense, familiar pressure on my spine as a fifth limb grew. Fur spouted all over my body. My teeth elongated into fangs. My ears pointed and grew thin. My fingernails grew into claws. I clawed at the creature, slicing its eye. It wailed an ungodly wail and jumped back, leering at me in fury. I pushed my transformation further. My chest stretched into a paw-like shape and my waist narrowed. My fingers shortened and fattened. I'd turned into a wolf fully. The only way you'd be able to tell me from the animal was that I was still decked out in a military tactical kit. I raised my tail up aggressively and pounced. My teeth found the throat of the creature. I crushed its windpipe and tore its carotid artery. I spat out the thing's blood. Another fleshgate's talons tore into my side, sending fur flying. I cried out in pain in a yelp that was drowned out by the commotion of combat. It clawed at me again, grazing my neck. The thick fur there protected me somewhat, but its attacks were relentless and far too fast for me to react to. It got me maybe 8 times in the space of a second and a half. I was bleeding now. Bad. The thing stank of death. I thought then it was over. That I'd be another casualty. Another penal sent off to his death where no one would know to mourn. Then, amidst the gunfire around me, a shot stood out. The bullet ripped through my assailant. Suki's sidearm smoked. She'd saved me. The sergeant's knife tore through the skull of one of the monsters, and I realized that the rest had backed off. There were 4 of us now. On 2 feet, soldier. He ordered. The creature's limp corpse slid from the blade onto the cave floor. He took a strange gas canister of some kind from his backpack, and took 2 more flares from Suki. I shifted back to a mostly human form. Sarge planted the flares in the ground just after the mouth of the cave. He set the canister down, pushing some buttons on it. It beeped several times, and I realized it was counting down. "Take point, Seth-son," he said. "And get your rifle. I hear werewolves and neurotoxins don't mix. Let's move, people. Evac is a mile away and we have 10 minutes before that gas releases. Double time." The helicopter took off into the warm night. The cleanup folks will clear out our Kias and remove the tangos tomorrow, Sarge said over the comm while we sat in the rising helicopter. Good work. We lost good people back there, but the objective is accomplished. The threat is eliminated and the public is none the wiser. They didn't die in vain. Heaven beckons, I murmured. Considering how close to hell I figured we'd all just been, going back to our real home may not have been so bad. We here below, though? There's evil all around us. Thanks for that back there, I told Suki. Just doing what I had to do, she replied, in accented but good English. The bodies came back in bags the next day. The hostiles were taken, too. The more intact ones as specimens for study, the less were cremated. Sarge took a drag from a cigarette as we sat in the penal cafeteria. He was a volunteer, so he could go wherever he wanted. He chose to be with his troops. You know, Seth-son, he told me, as he took another drag. What happened to your folks wasn't right. I broke away from his gaze. Coming after you, calling you domestic terrorists for a few illegal guns. But you know what? What? If your pop had surrendered instead of taking a shot, you wouldn't be here right now. There'd be no federal agent's blood on those claws of yours. They might have given you a slap on the wrist just for being around, but the terrorism charges would have been dropped. Maybe he'd be here instead, then, I replied solemnly. Maybe, he said. But you know what else? I'm glad it played out the way it did. I just stared blankly at him for a moment, processing that. He took another drag. Don't misunderstand me when I say this here, but it's best that what happened to you and not to someone else. If it had happened to someone normal, it would have been Ruby Ridge all over again. You're too young to remember, but that mess almost tore the country apart. Some sins, kid, are best left in the dark. He glanced at the clock. We're Oscar Mike in 15 minutes. He said. What's it this time? Suki asked. The Illuminati just took a few congressmen that refused to support them hostage. Snafu, basically. Damn right, Eric growled, his voice like a truck's motor. Another reason I'm glad what happened, kid. What's that? I asked. Got you watching my back, and my people's backs out there. You kids ready to crack some skulls? Hell, yeah, Sarge.